So we've discussed about the basics of forensic psychology and what criminal psychology are, as you can see. But what are the differences? How are they different? Because a lot of people get confused between forensic psychology and criminal psychology. Are they both the same? Are they very different to one another? Do they work alongside one another? What is really the scope of work they both do? So if you look at the focus of forensic psychology, it has a lot of intersection of psychology and the legal system. But criminal psychology focuses on understanding criminal behavior, and that is where you do criminal profiling as well. So, what really is the purpose? What do forensic psychologists do? They assist with legal proceedings and investigations. However, criminal psychologists, they study the causes and the prevention of crime. So when you look at the scope of the work they do, forensic psychology, it's very broad because it has to cover both the psychology elements of it as well as the legal elements and the assessments and interventions. However, criminal psychology is narrower comparatively because it focuses on prevention and completely around the criminal behavior. So looking at the legal context, as we've already discussed, forensic psychology is directly involved in the legal context. They go in for court evaluations, they get involved in legal cases. However, criminal psychology, it's less directly involved. The involvement is very less unless, of course, they're requested to come into the courtroom and the presence is really needed. They don't really go into a courtroom setup. For an instance, forensic psychologists may be there to do mental competencies, checking insanity, etc., right? The evaluation of it. And criminal psychologists probably would be called to report on the analysis of the criminal behavior, just to know more details of it, because they were working on it firsthand. And that would be the kind of assessments they do, and also more likely that they would be called in for when it comes to a courtroom setup. So who gets really involved in criminal profiling? Like I said, the criminal psychologists get really involved in criminal profiling, and they make this offender profiles as well. They study it very hard and they see how they could prevent them. On the other hand, yes, forensic psychologists also do get involved, but not at a very in-depth level. Both take part in research. Any field develops with research. So they both do research on the different areas. Forensic would be more of related to legal topics. However, criminology would be more of criminal behavior and its psychology and how they function. And the interventions, forensic psychology would offer treatments within the legal framework. However, criminal psychology have limited interventions and they're mostly involved in analysis aspect of it. When it comes to juveniles, the offenders, the legal system and the punishments and how to deal with it is mostly done with or revolves around the forensic psychologists. But studying of it, what really happened, why did they do it, investigating on the crime scene and the behavior would be criminal psychologists' focus. Criminal psychology not only studies the offender, they also study the victim. Okay. And forensic psychologists, they assess the psychological impacts of the victim. So there's this very slight gray area of difference. Pertaining to rehabilitation focus, forensic psychologists focus quite a lot on rehabilitating the offenders because they work alongside with the courtroom setup and the legal frameworks. However, criminal psychologists do not get involved in that phase. They have very less emphasis on rehabilitation. So when it comes to expert testimony, mostly the forensic psychologists would go in for the expert testimony in court cases. And in some instances, just to provide insight, the criminal psychologists would go in. So we saw a list of differences and slight similarities between the two fields. So they're really not the same. Of course, they work under the same umbrella term, right? However, there are very slight differences among the two fields, criminal psychology versus forensic psychology. Moving on,